Everyone. Thanks for your patience. We are going to get started with our panel now on experimental filmmaking and also on acting in the industry. So thank you so much for joining us for these really diverse films, not just in the folks in them, but also the experiences that we see. So I'd like to welcome Gera Mendez. Hello, Gera. Gera is the actor of the film Old Man, Sick Man, Shout. And Lee Pugsley, who is the producer and actor of Audio Description, which opened up the festival today. So my first question is, both of these films are experimental. And can you talk a bit about how these ideas were conceived and any obstacles you faced in getting them done? You know, Gera, you have said that yours is an experimental documentary short. And I just absolutely love how personal it is to you. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, the film is it's sometimes I see how sometimes when you do experimental work, it can be seen as a story, a work of fiction. But I was more interested in developing a new language to communicate some of the experiences that long-term survivors of HIV or AIDS, in my case, go through. Much of what our experiences were not really covered in the media, were not really seen. There were layers and layers of issues that were just not covered. And I bring a few of those in this film and hope to, in the future, bring more of these in a series of films similar to this. I'm not sure exactly what your question.
Yeah. What were some of the obstacles you faced along the way in terms of getting this made?
Well, you know, the film didn't have so many obstacles, but given that it took so long for me to be able to bring a film to the public, that is an obstacle in itself. When you're diagnosed with HIV and then AIDS, most of the community, at some point, the diagnosis was removed of AIDS because their immune system would be strong enough. But there are a large number of us whose immune systems never fully recovered. And so going to sort of the question of the difficulties, making the film was funded by an HIV organization, arts organization in New York, Visual AIDS. However, getting work as an actor or working in the industry for somebody who depends on Medicare and Medicaid to survive, Social Security, and I was lucky enough that I applied for private disability as well. But I can't take on projects where my name is in the papers. I can't take on projects where I'm getting paid because I risk losing thousands of dollars that it costs for me to have monthly medications. And all the other services that are provided. And so we're left in kind of a limbo of, on the one hand, people look at me and they won't necessarily see a disability. And of course, in some ways that has served me, but in other ways, it has not served the community because AIDS is not something that people talk about anymore. They haven't for 15 years, maybe longer. I think that we went to a fatigue of that. We lost too many people. It was just a very long time for society to carry that. And so the difficulties come in just being able to participate in creative projects. And so most of my creative projects have been local. They've been small. They've been, participating here and there. But the movie itself did come together, and I worked with a wonderful director, a friend of mine for over 30 years, and we did not have that many issues in terms of bringing that to the world.
No, that's really good to hear. And I really appreciate you being open about, the struggle of being on Medi-Cal, right, and Medicare and needing to stay on those services and not being able to make a certain amount of money. And so it's like you want to take on bigger projects. You want to see your acting career, like, get into the mainstream, right? But then at the same time, if you do that, you lose the benefits that literally keep you alive.
Right.
And especially for work like acting and writing, it's like those aren't steady income jobs. So it's like it is difficult, and I appreciate you bringing that to light and talking about that. So I'm gonna ask now, Lee. I would like to ask you the same question. Can you talk a bit about how like the creative idea of having the audio describer literally be talking to you and in conversation with you was conceived, and any obstacles you faced along the way in making this film, because you did have a very unique journey of making this film.
Yeah, so with audio description, the film, my director and I, my director Luke and I, we've known each other for over a decade. This was the first time that we collaborated together. And what kind of stemmed this idea for Luke, who was the one who wrote the script, I helped revise and do story development on it, was my journey with audio description, seeing how I used the conceit of audio description, that narration track, to get a full picture of movies and TV shows when I would watch them, and he found it really interesting. So when he pitched the idea to me about making audio description a part of this film, but not only just making it a narrative track, but also making it a character in the film, I really liked that idea, and I think both of us were on the same page about kind of like, I don't think we saw it necessarily as experimental, but it kind of was, in the sense of it invites the sighted audience, as well as the sighted audience, into my world, into the way that I am able to experience media. And there's a lot of people that don't know what audio description is, even still to this day. And so we thought it would be a good way to introduce that concept to other people, and also to highlight the importance of accessibility and why audio description matters, why it's important for people within our community to have that. And then the other thing that we really wanted to do was to unite the blind and sighted viewer together so that they have the same experience. Because when I go see movies in theaters, I have the little headset, which I know that we have here, but it's just me experiencing audio description, and sometimes it can feel a little isolating because no one else is experiencing it the same way that I am. So we really latched onto that idea of how can we bring people together to let them have a united experience, maybe to help educate them a little bit, but not to lecture them or give an education dump. Let's do this in a fun and creative way. And probably the biggest challenge along the way for us was the fact that we had 5 days to do this in. We entered it into the 2024 Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge, a 5-day challenge that gives filmmakers with disabilities a chance to tell their stories authentically. And one person in front of the camera or behind the scenes has to have a disability. That's the requirement. But from start to finish, from finishing, from script to post-production, everything has to be done in that 5 days. So just crunch time to really make it, we wanted it to be high quality. We wanted to, really do it justice. And that's not a lot of time. And I think another challenge with that was Luke was working full time, from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. So all of our shoots were 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. And I guess when we're talking about specific obstacles, the last day that we were shooting at an office building in the middle of Hollywood. And we were shooting the closet scene where I'm in the closet and first realize I can talk to the audio description narrator. At 1 a.m., the alarm in the building goes off because one of the silks on the lights got too close. Nothing caught on fire, but it was smoking. So the whole building in Hollywood, the alarm system is going off in this Hollywood neighborhood. And we hadn't even shot the scene yet. We were just getting everything set up. So we're like, this is terrible, because what is everyone in Hollywood thinking right now? Because everyone can hear it around the neighborhood. We didn't want the fire department to show up, and we didn't know how to shut off the alarm. So that was a whole thing that we had to figure out. And the fire department did come after all. And one of our location managers was on the phone with the alarm company. And the fire department was just like, oh, well, next time just call 911 and tell us not to come. And we're like, why didn't we think of that? And so we thought they were going to shut us down and we weren't going to get the last scene. But fortunately, we were able to get the last scene that we did. But that was definitely a challenge.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. And so glad you were able to make it within 5 days. Yeah, I remember I participated one year and I had midterms the week after, so I was studying on set. That was a wild time. So I would like to ask you, Gera, you are both actors. So Gera, can you talk a little bit about how personal your film is to you? And how your relationship with the director was on set in terms of building trust so that you could give your all to the performance.
Well, that's a good question. I guess one of the obstacles that I do recognize now is that I'm local from the Bay Area, and the director was coming in from Germany, and she had spent many years here in San Francisco, and is from Texas, so she's in the United States a few months a year, but having to work out sessions where she would come and visit, and we could work out some of the movements that I was going to be doing, to sort of showcase some of the joint issues that happen when you have a series of collapses in your system. For example, a lot of us lost all of the fat in our body, and that's lubricant for the muscles and the joints and all of that. And when you don't have that, you're grinding muscle on muscle, and I mean bone on bone, and so there were things that I definitely wanted to represent, and she was really, really wonderful in taking sort of my experience and giving me a framework within which to present my personal experience. And we structured the video in a way that it would have 3 parts. The first, of course, is the dance, the representation. And I know that that's not the question anymore, but
No. Please give us insight into the film, please.
yes. So Danza de los Viejitos is a traditional dance from the Purechepa people of Michoacan. And I'm from Michoacan. I have ancestry. My great-grandmother was Purepecha native. And so the project initially started with Dolisa doing a documentary that she's working on. And she had a segment of it that she wanted to include Danza de los Viejitos, because it's a big part of the border town in Brownsville where she comes from. They teach it to children through, it's just part of the culture. And for her, she remembers, if I could tell her story, she had a cousin who, the only gay person that she knew, she herself was a young lesbian in high school, and remembers thinking, like, nobody leaves the town, but my cousin left. He's got, but he came back a few years later and he was almost unrecognizable. And so for her, seeing the parade of young people wearing the Danza de los Viejitos, an old man mask, and dancing around falling and getting back up again with joy, that resonated with her. And she contacted me and said, well, you're the only person that I really know that's from Michoacan and is HIV positive and has lived a long years with this. So it came from that, and we realized that it was a good tool to sort of umbrella the experience of somebody living with HIV and AIDS for a long time, because it is like we have aged 12 years or so. And now the research is coming out. There was research that came out last year from a health organization based out of New York City, in a national study that showed that the majority of people with HIV are now over 50. The medical community is beginning to understand that regular medical care is not sufficient, that we need to start applying geriatric care and combining the two to treat patients. And so we're having to, after 30 years, still kind of be the experimental people. We're still the ones educating doctors. And so I wanted this film to speak on those things. But then also in the third section, there's the sort of the shaman gets to speak, the healer, or what we call the wounded healer, and what it takes to grow enough inside of your experience to be able to have enough silence that you can convey that. And that's what I was trying to do with the film, is show the authenticity of the anxiety, of the depression. You know, when it comes out and it says that anxiety and depression become the mask that you carry. We often, as many disabled people know, you carry your sadness in silence, in sometimes in isolation. And I think that it's wonderful that we see a lot of disability people that are disabled that are doing a lot for society, but we also need to hear the struggle. We need to hear the tears. We need to hear. We need to be able to connect emotionally, and the reason that this was a challenge was that if you say to people anything about AIDS, they already have a category for it in their minds to where to place that. Like, oh, I get it. I don't have to incorporate or think about it or feel it. We're bombarded by so many things now. It's just automatic. And it was really important to bring an experimental film to create a new language that is movement-based, with miming, and also a little bit of sort of poetry, sort of like koans in the back, talking about, you know, disappearing yourself to experience the oneness of the moment. And I'm hoping that to some people that does, that you do see that in the film.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That was beautiful. I would like to ask you, we have a couple minutes left. So just briefly, Lee, I would like to ask you what's next for you and how can our audiences support you?
Yeah, so we are developing audio description into a feature film. We are currently finishing up the screenplay for the feature version, which should be done by the end of this year or early next year. Then our goal is to go back to the producers that, you know, have expressed interest in. Comes the fun part of getting funding. Fingers crossed that we get the funding, then we hope to be in production and complete production next year. In addition, I'm also finishing up a documentary that I'm the subject of. This was not my idea, but the director has been following me around for the last 4.5 years, chronicling my journey with the disability community and being a visually impaired artist. So that will be done sometime next year. And then I have 2 other scripts that I'm finishing up that we're going to try to, you know, get sold. And then last thing is I co-host a podcast regularly called The Dark Room that focuses on it's hosted by me and another legally blind individual. We nerd out about movies, do reviews from a visually impaired and low vision point of view. And we also interview a lot of audio description writers, narrators, and entertainment professionals. It's called The Dark Room, and you can look for it on any podcast platform. And then you can also follow me on Instagram at Lee Pugsley, LeePugslyLA. And I post up my project updates there as well.
Thank you so much. I see a lot of people taking out their phones to follow you right now, Lee. So thank you. Gera, I would like to ask you the same question. What is next for you? How can our audiences support you on your journey?
Yes, what is next for me is the project or group that we have formed, Grito, Viejito. We have applied for a grant, and we got a small startup grant to do the next project, which is a new media project. And the basic idea, well, it's called the Portal of Silence. And the basic idea is you enter a site and then you're given options. You're going to be met by my marionette characters that I've made. And they're going to give you options of different experiences to have, 4 different experiences. And they're like going in through a tunnel. And so you'll have an audio experience, something maybe poetic or maybe just a sound-based experience, a small mini video, maybe 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, and then a film like the one that you just saw of Viejito, Enfermito, Grito at the end of it. And the idea is that we're all in different places in our healing path. And if I could create 3 more movies at the tail end of that, well, one of the mini films has been made, 3 other ones, and then start working on the audio, other rest of the experience, that we could create a model for other people to create healing spaces that are interactive, that you can choose. My journey today is going to be to explore, for example, one of the films I'm going to make is going to be around depression and how it relates to people isolated and not participating in society, which happens with many people with HIV and AIDS. In my case, if I may, you can still see the facial wasting on my face, and I'm lucky in this country. There are people in South America that are taking medicines from over 15 years ago, and in Venezuela, I think it is, there was a video that came out 2 years ago where they could identify all the people with HIV because they all take the same medicine and they're all yellow. Their eyes are yellow. And so there's the yellow people. There's the yellow people. And part of isolation, as it is for, I imagine, for other disabilities, right, that we're visible. We can't hide behind anything. And so that leads to more isolation. And so I'm hoping that this project will bring visibility to other HIV-related issues, still using the umbrella of Danza de los Viejitos to tell the stories in. So it's very complex and very difficult to write for this. But having participated in this film festival and along these amazing, the quality of these films has been so amazing. I'm truly humbled and hope that I'm inspired and appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you so much for being here. Big thank you to Gera and Lee, our panelists. And just, we appreciate you being here. We have another event at 4:30, which is a virtual event. And we also have a Halloween Superfest showcase coming up on the 30th. So please stay tuned for that. But until then, thank you for enjoying these Superfest films. We will be sending an email out with more information about how you can support our filmmakers and how you can support our festival. Thank you.